Have you ever walked into a room and forgotten why you were there, or started telling a story only to realize halfway through that you've completely lost your train of thought? If that sounds familiar, don't worry, you're not alone. These little lapses in focus start to creep in more often after 60, and while they might seem harmless at first, they can be incredibly frustrating. They can make you feel like you're slipping, like your mind isn't quite as sharp as it used to be, and that feeling, that quiet fear in the back of your mind that you might be fading a little, it's something no one really talks about, but so many of us feel. The good news is your brain isn't broken. It's just a little out of practice. Just like your muscles get weaker when you stop moving, your focus gets fuzzier when it's not being actively used. But here's the really exciting part. You can train your brain to get sharper, quicker, and more alert, even in just a few minutes a day. You don't need pills or fancy apps. You don't even need to leave your chair. All it takes is one simple mental exercise, 5 minutes, every day. Now, before we get into the details of that exercise, let's talk for a moment about why this matters so much. Focus isn't just about remembering where you put your glasses or following a recipe. It's the foundation of your entire mental well-being. When your focus is strong, your memory improves, your conversations flow more naturally, your decision-making becomes clearer, and you start feeling more in control of your life again. Because let's face it, after 60, so much of life can feel like it's out of our control. Bodies change. Roles shift, people move on, but your mind, that's yours. And keeping it sharp gives you back a sense of power, independence, and confidence. It reminds you that you are still very much in the driver's seat of your own life. So what is this exercise, and why does it work? It's something I call the 5-minute mind anchor. It's incredibly simple, but don't let that fool you. The power of it is in the practice. Think of it like tuning a radio. This exercise helps your brain tune out the static so you can dial in on what truly matters. Here's how it works. You start by sitting comfortably. Eyes open or closed, your choice. Take one slow, deep breath, then pick one object in your environment, a cup, a lamp, your hand, anything really, and direct your full attention to it for 5 minutes. I don't mean just glance at it. I mean observe it. Study its color, the texture, the way light hits it. Think about how it feels, what memories it brings up, what emotions it stirs. Keep your entire awareness anchored on that one thing. Now you might be thinking, that's it, yes, that's it. But here's what's actually happening in your brain while you do this. You're training your mind to stay in a world that constantly pulls your attention in 100 different directions. Phones, background noise, wandering thoughts. This tiny act of staying put mentally is revolutionary. At first, your thoughts will drift. That's okay. That's part of the process. You'll start thinking about what to cook for dinner or whether you locked the back door. Just gently notice that your mind has wandered and bring it back to the object. Over and over. That's the exercise. Not staying focused perfectly, but returning to focus repeatedly. Every time you come back, it's like doing a mental push-up. You're building strength. You're rewiring your brain to concentrate more deeply and for longer periods. And something remarkable begins to happen after a few days. You start noticing things. Your attention feels sharper. You remember conversations better. You stop mid-sentence less often. You start enjoying books again without having to reread every paragraph. It's subtle at first, but it builds quickly, like a fog lifting. You may even feel calmer because focus brings clarity and clarity brings peace. So many of our anxious thoughts come from mental clutter. When you train your mind to focus on one thing, you create space. You feel less scattered, less rushed, more here. And there's another powerful side effect of this exercise. It begins to spill into other areas of your life. You find it easier to listen deeply during conversations. You feel more present during meals, walks, and family visits. You react less impulsively and make better decisions, even in stressful moments. It's not just about your brain, it's about your whole experience of life becoming richer and more grounded. Now, you might be wondering, why is this particularly important after 60? Well, here's the thing. The brain, like the body, undergoes some natural changes with age. But many of the declines we blame on getting older are actually just a result of underuse. The good news, your brain remains incredibly adaptable, even into your 80s and 90s. Scientists call it neuroplasticity, and it simply means your brain can form new connections, grow stronger, and even rebuild areas that have weakened. But the key is to give it something to work with. That's what this 5-minute exercise does. It gives your brain the training it craves, but without stress, pressure, or complexity. And anyone can do it. You don't need perfect health. You don't need a great memory already. All you need is the willingness to sit quietly and practice the skill of attention. One breath, one object, one moment at a time. I've seen this transform people's lives. Seniors who had almost given up on reading books because they couldn't follow the story anymore, suddenly finishing novels again. Grandparents who used to forget details from phone calls, now recalling conversations with clarity. Even people with mild cognitive changes reporting better days, more alertness, more confidence. The beautiful thing is that this isn't about being perfect, it's about showing up. 5 minutes a day, that's all it takes. And over time, those minutes build into something that changes how you think, how you feel, and how you live. So if you've ever felt frustrated by your forgetfulness, overwhelmed by mental clutter, or just a little slower in thought than you used to be, know this: you're not stuck. Your brain still has so much life in it, so much potential, and this simple exercise can help you unlock that. And once you begin to unlock that potential, the shift is undeniable. You might find yourself remembering little things you used to forget, like where you put your keys or the name of the neighbor you used to wave at every morning. And slowly, without forcing it, confidence starts to creep back in, the kind of quiet confidence that says, "I've got this, my mind is still strong." That's the beauty of small, intentional habits. They seem almost too simple to work, but they work because they're consistent. And this 5-minute mental anchor, it isn't just about focus. It's about reclaiming your relationship with your thoughts, taking ownership of what your mind gives energy to. And that's something we often forget we can even do. Let's go a little deeper now, because there's something powerful that happens once you begin practicing this every day. You start to notice how noisy the world around you actually is, not just in terms of sound, but in distractions. Constant updates, endless scrolling, too many opinions. For most people over 60, these distractions aren't just annoying, they're mentally draining. You've spent decades working hard, raising families, handling responsibilities. And now that you've reached this stage of life, peace and clarity shouldn't feel like a luxury. They should be the reward. But here's the catch: peace doesn't just appear. You have to create space for it. And this exercise is one of the gentlest ways to do exactly that. When you sit down and give your mind just one task, you're telling your brain, this moment matters. You're choosing intention over autopilot. And that choice, it's empowering. It gives you a sense of control again. Because let's be honest, after 60, so many things begin to feel like they're slipping from your hands. But your ability to choose what you focus on, that remains yours, every single day. Now here's something you might not expect. As your focus sharpens, your mood often improves too. That's because scattered thinking often leads to scattered emotions. When the mind is jumping around, it's easy to feel anxious or low. But when the mind is still, focused, something remarkable happens. Calm returns. And with calm comes a deep sense of stability. You might notice your sleep improving, your conversations becoming more thoughtful, your overall sense of contentment rising. Why? Because your brain isn't overworked and overstimulated anymore. It's being cared for, like a garden that finally gets watered after weeks of neglect. And the ripple effect continues. You start becoming more aware of your surroundings. You might notice the pattern on your rug that you hadn't seen in years, or hear birds you'd stopped paying attention to. You might taste your food more fully, enjoy a cup of tea in a way that feels richer than before. That's the power of present moment awareness. It brings depth to everyday life. Now I want to share something important about this journey. There will be days when your mind feels restless. Days when focusing on one object for even 30 seconds feels impossible. That's not failure, that's training. Think of it like learning to walk again after an injury. The stumbles are part of the process. Each time your thoughts wander and you bring them back, you're making your brain stronger. In fact, those moments of distraction, they're golden. They're opportunities. Every time you gently redirect your attention, you're strengthening your mental muscles. And just like physical fitness, mental fitness improves slowly, quietly, until one day you realize that things that once felt hard now feel effortless. And if 5 minutes ever feels too long, you can start with 2. You can anchor your attention to a sound instead of an object. Maybe the hum of the fridge, the tick of a clock, the rhythm of your breath. The point isn't what you focus on, it's that you are focusing, with purpose, with intention. And as that becomes your daily practice, your brain learns something vital. That it can choose where to land, that it doesn't have to drift endlessly, that it doesn't have to be at the mercy of every passing thought or emotion. This is especially helpful during times of stress. When life feels overwhelming, you can return to your anchor, even if it's just for a few minutes. And in that short time, your nervous system calms, your heartbeat steadies, your mind quiets, and you feel more capable of facing whatever comes next. That's what this exercise gives you. It's not just sharper focus, it's resilience, it's mental steadiness, it's a quiet knowing that you can meet life with grace instead of anxiety. And what's even more exciting is that as your focus improves, so does your memory. That's because focus and memory are deeply connected. You can't remember what you didn't fully notice in the first place. So the sharper your attention, the more clearly you experience moments, and the more easily you recall them later. Think about the last time you misplaced something. Chances are it wasn't because your memory failed. It was because your attention wasn't fully there in the moment you placed it down. This daily practice brings you into each moment more fully, and over time, that awareness builds a stronger memory bank. It's also worth mentioning that this kind of mental training has been shown to slow cognitive decline. Studies have found that older adults who engage in mindfulness and focused attention exercises show improved attention span, better working memory, and even slower rates of age-related brain changes. That's not just theory, it's science. So if you've ever wondered, is there something I can do to keep my mind strong? This is it. This is something you can control. Something that costs nothing, requires no equipment, and fits into any schedule. And it's not just good for your brain, it's good for your spirit. Because you're not just training your mind, you're caring for it. You're telling yourself, I still matter. My focus still matters. My mind is still worth investing in. And that shift in mindset is powerful. It reminds you that you haven't been left behind, that you're still growing, still evolving, still capable of incredible clarity. And it all begins with one moment, one breath, one decision to sit and anchor your attention. It's simple. It's gentle, but it's also profound. And that's the beautiful part. This journey doesn't require big steps or dramatic changes. Just 5 minutes, a little intention, and a willingness to sit with your own thoughts without judgment, without rushing. That alone can begin to shift everything. But let's talk about something that doesn't get enough attention: emotional clutter. You see, as we age, we often focus on our physical health, our joints, our diet, our medications. But what about the constant noise in our minds, the old arguments we replay, the regrets, the should-haves and the what-ifs? They don't just weigh on the heart, they crowd the mind. And the thing is, emotional clutter is sneaky. You might not even realize how much space it's taking up until you start clearing it out. That's another reason why this mental anchoring exercise is so powerful. It creates a pause. It gives you a moment where you're not tangled in yesterday or rushing toward tomorrow. You're just here, breathing, noticing, being. In that space, healing begins to happen. Your mind learns to rest, your thoughts slow down. And suddenly, the things that once felt loud and overwhelming begin to lose their grip. You stop reacting to everything. You become more aware of what truly needs your attention and what doesn't. Imagine how different your days might feel if you didn't carry every little stress with you from hour to hour. If you didn't let every passing worry plant itself in your chest. That's what focused awareness offers. It's not just sharper thinking, it's freedom. Freedom from mental overload. Freedom from constantly second-guessing yourself. And when your mind is clear, something else rises to the surface: your natural creativity. That spark you thought had faded, it's still there. You just need quiet to hear it again. I've seen people over 60 rediscover passions they hadn't touched in years. Painting, writing, playing music, even gardening. Simply because their mind was no longer cluttered with static. You might be surprised at what begins to stir when you give yourself 5 minutes a day to focus inward. You start remembering dreams you once had. You start getting ideas, new ways to spend your time, new ways to connect with loved ones, new ways to care for yourself. That's the clarity we're really after. Not just remembering where you put your glasses, but remembering who you are. And if that sounds like a stretch or too far off, let me gently reassure you, it's not. That version of you is already there. Under the fog, under the noise, under the busy thoughts. You're not trying to become someone new, you're simply returning to yourself. That's the deeper gift of this practice. Over time, it reconnects you to you, not the version that others need you to be. Not the one shaped by routines and roles and responsibilities, but the part of you that feels grounded, calm, whole. And that has ripple effects in your relationships too. You'll likely notice you're more patient with others, more present in conversations. You listen differently, because your brain isn't racing ahead or drifting off. You show up more fully, and people can feel that. Your presence becomes stronger, more comforting, more magnetic. It's not uncommon for those around you to ask, "You seem more at ease lately. What changed?" And the answer might surprise them. Because how often do we assume big changes come from big actions? But you'll know, it came from something small, something gentle, something you committed to quietly, just for yourself. That kind of change that begins within, is the most sustainable kind. It doesn't rely on motivation or external rewards. It becomes part of who you are, a steady habit, a tool you carry with you into every part of your day. And over time it becomes something you look forward to. Your 5 minutes becomes a sacred pause, a reset button, a way to begin again, no matter how the day started. And once you get used to it, you may even find yourself doing it at different times, before bed, in the middle of a tough moment, or even while waiting in line. You don't need a perfect setting, just the intention to come back to your breath, your focus, your awareness. Let's also talk about confidence, because when your focus sharpens and your mind feels less foggy, your confidence naturally rises. You stop second-guessing yourself in conversations. You stop feeling embarrassed when words escape you for a second. You trust yourself again. And that trust shows up in your posture, in your tone, in the way you carry yourself. Confidence after 60 isn't about knowing everything, it's about knowing yourself. And when you show yourself that you're willing to care for your own mind, even in this simple way, that confidence grows. You feel less like you're fading and more like you're reawakening. Because here's the truth. Life after 60 doesn't have to be about decline. It can be about refinement, about tuning into the parts of you that have been buried under years of noise, distraction, and busyness. And this 5-minute practice, it's one of the simplest, most powerful ways to do that. It's not about fixing yourself. It's about remembering your strength, your clarity, your presence. You don't need a complicated system. You don't need a dozen new habits. You just need a quiet corner, a few minutes, and a willingness to return, again and again, to that place inside you that knows how to pay attention, how to be still, how to see clearly. Because the sharper your focus becomes, the more vibrant your life feels. You'll begin to notice the smallest joys. The way morning light spills across the table, the smell of fresh fruit, the sound of laughter next door, the warmth of your own breath. And as your awareness deepens, so does your appreciation. Not just for the world around you, but for yourself, for your journey, for your capacity to grow even now. And when that appreciation takes root, when you begin to truly see yourself with fresh eyes, it transforms not just your day, but your entire outlook on life. You're no longer just getting through the days, you're actually living them, savoring them. That's the difference a focused mind can make. It helps you show up, not just for others, but for yourself. And maybe that's the message that's been missing all along. That after 60, you're not meant to slow down in spirit. You're meant to deepen, to awaken parts of yourself that were quiet for years while you were busy working, raising a family, handling everything life threw your way. And now that you have this space, it's time to come home to your mind again. This 5-minute mental exercise is more than just a technique. It's a doorway, a way of saying to yourself, I still matter, my thoughts still matter, my presence still matters. And the more you return to it day after day, the more it begins to change how you move through the world. You may find that you start responding rather than reacting, that conversations feel less rushed, more meaningful, that your words come easier, your thoughts feel more organized, and that spark, that inner clarity, starts to glow a little brighter with every passing week. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to feel safe in your own mind again. Because when your focus is scattered, when your memory feels shaky, it's easy to start doubting yourself, to feel like you're slipping. But this practice reminds you that your mind is still capable, still flexible, still full of strength and resilience. You're not broken, you're rebuilding, one gentle step at a time. And the benefits go beyond mental clarity, because as your focus improves, your overall wellness improves too. Stress levels drop, sleep becomes deeper, even your physical health benefits, because a calm, focused mind supports everything from blood pressure to digestion to immune function. It's all connected. When your mind feels better, your whole body responds. So how do you keep this going? How do you make sure this doesn't just become another forgotten idea that fades into the background? You anchor it in something that already exists in your daily life. Maybe it's 5 minutes after your morning tea. Maybe it's while you're sitting in your favorite chair by the window, or before bed when the world has quieted down. Choose a moment that feels natural, not like a chore, but like a gift to yourself. And if you ever miss a day, that's okay. Just begin again. No guilt, no pressure. The beauty of this practice is that it welcomes you back without judgment every single time. And perhaps over time, you'll begin to see that 5 minutes isn't just a tool, it's a mirror. A reflection of your willingness to care for yourself, to show up for your own mind. And that, more than anything, is what brings lasting change. Not because you're trying to become someone else, but because you're finally giving yourself the time and space to be who you truly are. Clear, calm, capable, and full of untapped potential. And remember, you don't have to do this alone. If this message has resonated with you, if you felt even a small shift while listening, I invite you to share your experience in the comments. Let others know they're not alone. Because there are so many people out there, just like you, who want to feel more focused, more alive, more in control. Your voice could be the one that gives someone else hope. And while you're here, go ahead and like this video. It helps this message reach others who may be feeling the same frustrations, the same forgetfulness, the same longing for clarity. And don't forget to subscribe to Reclaim 60 Plus, where we're building a community of strong, thoughtful, resilient minds just like yours. This channel is here to remind you that growing older doesn't mean growing less. It means growing into yourself fully, gently, powerfully. Because the truth is, your brain is not in decline, it's in transition. And like any transition, it needs patience, it needs attention, and it needs care. You have the power to give it all three. So today, start small. Sit with yourself for 5 quiet minutes. Pick an object. Focus your gaze or close your eyes and anchor your attention on your breath. And just stay, not perfectly, but patiently. Each time your mind drifts, bring it back. That act alone is where the transformation begins, and with each passing day you'll notice the difference. Not just in what you remember, but in how you feel about remembering. In how confident you are, in how connected you feel to the present moment, and how much more joy you begin to find in life's quietest corners. Because your best days aren't behind you, they're still unfolding. And with a sharper mind, you'll be ready for all the beauty, the insight, and the freedom they bring. Here's to your focus, your clarity, your joy, and most of all, here's to you.